Well, hello and welcome, good evening, and welcome to a very special program on Cricket Predicta on NewsX, powered by 1xBet. Yesterday, Indian Premier League matches witnessed thrilling encounters as Rajasthan Royals kicked off the IPL 2024 campaign with a commanding 20-run victory over Lucknow Super Giants, setting a formidable target of 194, and Rajasthan shocked in their batting prowess, scoring 193 for 4 in 20 overs. Despite a valiant effort from Lucknow scoring 173 in 6, they fell short of the mark. Meanwhile, in the second match, the Gujarat Titans clinched a nail-biting win against Mumbai Indians by 6 runs. Mumbai's struggle in the opening matches continued as they succumbed to their consecutive defeat in the season's opener, managing only 162 runs in the 9, and in response, Gujarat's 168 for 6. Sai Sudarshan and captain Shubman Gill contribution propelled Gujarat to victory, despite Jasprit Bumrah's formidable bowling display. Well, that's about it. The turning attention in today's clash at the MA Chinnaswamy Stadium at Bengaluru, Royal Challengers Bangalore and Punjab Kings gear up for an exciting showdown, while Punjab Kings boasts a slight edge in their head-to-head encounters, having won 17 of their 31 matches against Bangalore's 14 victories. The margin between the two teams remains narrow, with Bengaluru's home advantage evident from their track record at the Chinnaswamy Stadium. Having won 39 of their 84 matches played there, Punjab faces a formidable challenge as the anticipation mounts for another thrilling encounter between two of the biggest cricket rivalries in cricket, and we'll watch in IPL what emerges today. But we have a strong lineup of my guests today. One from Australia, Paul Dinette, the man who predicted Mumbai Indians to win, and we'll come back to him. Also is his very good friend, David Brooks, the man from London who's watched and been associated with cricket media for 4 decades now, having held responsible position, and now is a big critic. And also joining us is a man who knows a thing or two about cricket coaching. Stanley, I still can't pronounce your second name, Stanley. You've got to introduce that. And he's been the coach of the Zimbabwe team as the assistant coach under Lalchand Rajput and many other coaches for over a decade and a half. Well, gentlemen, welcome to the show. First question, all to Paul Dinette, our favorite Aussie punching bag. Paul, what went wrong yesterday in Mumbai Indians thing where you predicted they're going to have a good go at it? Your views?
Well, I'll tell you what, when they needed 48 from 36 with 7 wickets in hand, I was 100% certain that my prediction would come true. It's quite a stunning, thing to lose from there. Admittedly, Rashid Khan bowled 2 of the next overs, and I think only went for about 8 runs. But when you've got someone as brilliant as Tim David to anchor the innings, I looked up the stats. He has a strike rate of 200 in the death overs. You would have got any old odds for them not winning. And then right at the end, when they looked like they lost it, then they suddenly looked like they were going to win it again. So, yeah, my prediction was wrong, but I think, I was pretty close.
It's a good thing that your prediction was almost correct, but we'll also invite David Brooks. David, welcome to the show, and tell us what's happening today. The big match at the Chinnaswamy Stadium. What do you make of the pitch? What do you make of the records? And does the past record hold firm in today's encounter? Your views?
Well, the stats would say it's going to be a high-scoring match, and I would expect that to be the case. I'm going to side with... it's going to be very close because, as we know, the Kings are coming off that morale-boosting victory, whereas RCB lost their first game. But I still favour RCB. I think Virat Kohli is going to come good today. His record speaks for itself, and back on the home ground, and having had 1 game to get his eye in, today's going to be the big day for him. So I just look down the 2 teams and I just see a bit more quality in the RCB side. I mean, the Kings will be pleased that 2 of the 3 Englishmen looked like they were hitting some form. That partnership between Curran and Livingston was impressive because it sort of put the recent past behind them in terms of the dismal World Cup performance, and they both, Livingston in particular, batted more responsibly than we've seen him recently. So that will give a boost to the middle order for the Kings today. I think a very close game, I hope.
Well, absolutely. Close game. That's an interesting point you made, that England players certainly look in the middle of things and also look like they are here to deliver business. Well, that's for franchise to see. We also move our attention to Stanley. Stanley, my first question, how do you pronounce your second name?
Well, it's Gioza, actually.
All
Just
right.
Gioza.
I always get fumbled. But coming on to the part, what do you think of the Punjab Kings lineup today? With Liam Livingstone, Prabhsimran Singh, Sam Curran, Rele Rousseau. Do you think they make quite a punch with that kind of lineup?
I think they most certainly do. I think it's one of those teams that has a well-balanced side.
Right.
It's got everything that you can ask for. It's got a good top order. It's got a good middle order. I mean, and if you really look at the stats, they do tell a story that they actually do have quite a gear up in terms of games played against the RCB. I mean, if you look at the stats, you've got Kagiso Rabada, who has a great record against the RCB batters, especially Faf du Plessis, 16 in 13 balls and 2 dismissals against Virat Kohli, 3 dismissals for just 27 runs and 23 balls. I mean, and Dinesh Karthik as well, 14 runs and just 19 balls. So there's plenty of positives to take out from the Kings.
I'm just going to hold you on there, on Dinesh Karthik. Do you think he's having a brilliant ride, on whether it's behind the camera or whether it's with the mic on or with the pads on? What do you think of him?
Well, at the end of the day, perhaps he's preparing for the future, so you've got to be adaptable, But at the end of the day, his number one job right now, as it stands, is with the bat. So obviously we're going to have to judge him with the bat as opposed to on the camera at this moment in time.
Well, that's an interesting point. We also move our focus onto the bowling of RCB. RCB seems to be David Brooks' favourite team because of Virat Kohli, of course. We also have Mohammad Siraj, Karn Sharma, Cameron Green and Mayank Dagar. David, your views on the bowling lineup, how the things are shaping up and what do you feel of it?
Well, it's time for Siraj to come good. 11 wickets in his last 10 matches doesn't do justice to what he's capable of. I was impressed with Karn Sharma. He keeps it tight. I mean, Cameron Green has the ability to change a match, and he's going to chip in. He's had a couple of good test series. He's coming in, he looks in good form with bat and ball. And I fancy him to pick up some wickets against CSK. And then I was impressed with Mayank Dagar. He's certainly economical and only conceded 6 runs in his 2 overs. So, yeah, the RCB known for its strength in batting. The bowlers have got to come to the party. I wonder whether Reece Topley will play today instead of Alzari, Joseph. Alzari was a bit expensive, wasn't he? And they might want to go with Reece Topley. He's not certain to last the whole tournament with his injury record, but when he plays, he's a very skillful bowler. And if wickets at the top are important, then I would expect Reece Topley to have a game today.
David, you just mentioned a while ago about the English players coming into the groove. Do you think they're early starters or they take time, as the Aussies were different, they take time to warm up, and once they are there, they're like on a F1 motor card?
I think the England players, it looked like they were ready to go, didn't it? The way that Sam Curran and Livingstone batted. I mean, Bairstow didn't last long, and my God, he's due a decent score, isn't he? I still don't fancy him to score runs today. But it looks as though Curran and Livingstone have got in, and it won't be for lack of preparation. These guys will have prepared well. They've had the recent series in India, and they look like they're ready to go. Yeah, the Aussies take a while to warm up, don't they? As Mitchell Stark will tell you.
Rather, Paul Jeanette would come to their defence and tell us, especially what they did to India in the World Cup. Paul, your defence?
Yeah, it's true. I hope they can do the same thing, because I was chatting to David before the show, and Mitchell Stark and Pat Cummins, they're in a wonderful position in that they are under great pressure because they are earning career-changing, life-changing amounts of money. But that pressure can quickly become unbearable, because already in the Australian media, they're doing calculations for how much money per ball Mitchell Stark is going to be earning. No one begrudges him it, because he's He's missed lots of IPLs to focus on his Australian career and his family. So good on him for getting the money. But yeah, a couple of poor performances. I was even hearing a podcast today with us.
Just for our viewers, Paul, forgive me for interrupting you, just for our viewers, what is the kind of monies that these guys make vis-a-vis what you make at the domestic level? Your views?
I think that for an Australian player who is earning the top dollar, then you kind of... An Australian player is probably going to be earning in Australian dollars about $1.5 million a year before endorsements. But for these guys, they're basically getting double that for 8 weeks, 10 weeks work. It is quite considerable. And I wasn't that long ago that Australian players earned very, very little. So there are a lot of players who retired just before the IPL began who just can't believe that they're born at the wrong time to miss out on all these riches.
Well, very interesting point. Let's shift our focus to Stanley Chiozza. Stanley, what do you think of the amount that Paul just said for the entire year plus the 8 weeks gig that they get? Do you think world is unkind to the African continent?
Well, the amounts that these guys are getting nowadays is astronomical, isn't it? And I suppose thanks to that bidding, that open auction system, that kind of like lets coaches, teams fight for players, and then that just boosts up the amounts. But be that as it may, it's not like they don't deserve it. If you look at the caliber for the bowlers concerned, like your Pat Cummins, he's been a performer of note, isn't he? And Mitchell Starc, we know what he brings to the table, especially in that first stint of the IPL in 2016. He was fabulous. He's been away for a while. Obviously, that's pressure on its own coming back into India. There'll be lots of pressure for him to perform, and like what Paul said, the amounts that we're now talking about, that's pressure on its own. But these are big-time performers. It's not like this is a stage they've never been before. They know how to handle this pressure, and I'm sure someone like Mitch Starc, Pat Cummins, they are roaring to go, and they're looking to go to do well for their teams. Absolutely.
Just take us through the mind of the Zimbabwean players. Do you think this is like the light at the end of the tunnel, that they see one of their players actually playing here, and the others can also come in times to come? And are they excited about the IPL in your part of the world?
The IPL, because pretty much the IPL happens when our season is done here. So yes, pretty much that's one thing that the players are looking to watch, and when they can afford to put their feet up. So having somebody from Zimbabwe participating in Secunda Raza, it's a massive boost, because for some reason, for now, they know it's possible. Back then, nobody ever dreamt that Zimbabwe could participate in the IPL because of the level of expectation, the level of performance, the requirements of it, And when you play for them, it's not always like we are always on the winning side, So our games are not viewed as much as we would like. But when you get a standout performer like Secunda Raza, who's done well for himself, it's always good to watch. And, we're hoping that maybe perhaps in the next year or two, or maybe a couple of years from now on, perhaps 2 or 3 more Zimbabweans can feature in that tournament.
Well, absolutely. That's a good sign for the Zimbabwean cricketers and the administrators. Remember, India, after the World Cup, heads straight back to Zimbabwe for a 5 T20 ODIs at Harare Sports Club. Keep an eye on that as well. Now we shift our focus to David Brooks. David, what do you think of the batting today with Faf, Virat, Anuj Rawat and Glenn Maxwell coming? Will they explode in the first 10 overs, or will they take it lightly? What do you think of that? And I'll come to Paul on the pitch and the head-to-head when it comes to toss. First is David.
I hope they build up gradually. I don't see any reason to go mad in the first couple of overs. It's not Kohli's style. And when Faf does it, he often gets out. So I think they've got to build it up. With Maxwell and Green, that's the key thing we've just been talking about. Will the Aussies be ready? Are they going to adapt, to these conditions? We've seen what Maxwell can do in the World Cup. Is he going to be ready to go? Has he played any? I have to ask Paul whether he's played any recent cricket leading up to this. We know that Cameron Green has, and is in good form. So with the 2 Aussies at 4 and 5, there's a big focus on them today. But I think Kohli will come good and bat through. We want to see Kohli batting long and giving the innings some stability. And then, as you say, you've got Kartik, who seems in great form, to come in, and Rawat, at 6 and 7. So the batting is there. No one's questioning the batting. It's whether the guys are ready to go now and can pick themselves up and get off to a good second game in the tournament.
Well, let's see. Paul, this question goes to you. Arshdeep Singh, Harshal Patel, Harpreet Brar, and Kasiko Rabada. Do you think they're going to stop the onslaught of the RCB players?
It's such a tantalising prospect because every time RCB bat, I just assume they're going to get 220, and they often do disappoint me. I was interested what Trevor Bayliss said about Kagiso Rabada the other night, and I think Trevor Bayliss is a great coach. He's a fellow Aussie, so I don't want to criticise him. But he said his job is just to take wickets. We don't care if he goes for too many runs. And that's a bit of a bugbear of mine, that I sometimes think that's it's far better for me to criticise a coach of Trevor Bayliss's pedigree. But yeah, of course runs is important. And I just don't think that you've got to go in there with that mindset of you've got to blast them out. Sometimes a little bit of old-fashioned, boring bowling can be a little bit the right way of going about things. But I think that RCB's batting lineup might be slightly better on paper, but I do think that Punjab Kings do have a slightly better bowling lineup, and potentially they can stem the runs. Maxwell, I saw, has a pretty ordinary record against Harpreet Brar. But Maxi, after failing in that first game, he's just as likely to come out and score 100. He's one of the most exhilarating players to be a fan of because he disappoints you, but then when he turns it on, he plays innings that no one else can.
Well, you made a very interesting point. What we basically feature are the head-to-head, the impact players, the bowlers, the batters. It's time I would get David Brooks and Stanley. First, Stanley, talking about Andy Flower, the coach. The Royal Challengers Bangalore head coach, Andy Flower. Stanley, you must have seen him from the close quarters, coming from the same area. Just take us through, and then I would go on to David Brooks on the two coaches. They were also the head of England coaching staff by not being the English nationalities. But that's for you to, take your daggers out at Paul. But in the meanwhile, Stanley, what is your view of Andy Flower, the coach?
Well, talking about Andy Flower, he's such a household name in Zimbabwe cricket books, isn't he? I actually had an opportunity to play club cricket with him. I was quite a youngster at the time. But the one thing that comes out of Andy Flower is he's a method man. Okay, he follows criteria. He follows a plan. So you can expect plenty of planning. You can expect some sort of routine in the approach for the Kings. He's a man who demands performance out of his players. So you can expect that sort of nature of Andy Flower taking that from his persona of how he played, and obviously trying to bring it out of the players of the Punjab Kings. And I mean, he's done that pretty much everywhere he's gone. And he likes to plan. That's the one good thing about Andy Flower. He's big on that.
David, your view on Trevor. We've had a long chat in the World Cup, and you obviously took some punches and gave it to Paul as well in his defense. Your views, do you think it's a battle within the battle of the coaches as well sometime?
Well, it's certainly a battle of two contrasting styles, because Trevor Bayliss doesn't say very much, does he? And he doesn't show a lot of emotion either. The man with the sun hat. I can't remember him really saying an awful lot when he was coach, but he had a very successful period with the England team. As Stanley said, whereas Andy Flower is much more in your face, sort of demanding, putting the pressure on the players. So it's a question of how, what's the best, who's going to get the best response from the players, putting the pressure on or taking the pressure off, which Trevor Bayliss does with his laconic style. I mean, they're both very shrewd coaches, and has Andy Flower achieved the success on the franchise circuit that he's achieved in international cricket? I wonder about that. But two contrasting styles, and it'd be interesting to see, when it comes to getting the best out of Virat, you would think that Ravi Shastri was the master of that. What were the relationships like between Andy Flower and Virat would be interesting to know. But
good point.
He's got, I think battle of two contrasting styles, but both very shrewd coaches.
Absolutely. Trevor doesn't say much. Andy does a very methodical job. But at the same time, you are batting and spin bowling coach S. Sriram at the Royal Challenge Bangalore. Bowling coach is Adam Griffith. Fielding coach and head of scouting is Malolan Rangarajan. Punjab Kings on the assistant. We have Brett Hardin. Again, batting coach is Wasim Jaffer. Fast bowling coach is Shaul Langawat. And spin bowling coach is Sunil Joshi. Very interesting. The combination of Sunil Joshi with Kuldeep Yadav was an interesting point in the Indian cricket scene where he created or reintroduced Kuldeep Yadav in a different light. Again, do you think if you have a coach or a speciality coach of your choice who can really egg your attacking bowler, does that help? And this question is to Stanley. Do you think if you get a very considerate coach, the performance of the player just pivots?
Well, it comes down to the relationship at the end of the day, because at the end of the day, this job is about how both people relate to one another as in coach, players, and how they relate to one another, how the information is bouncing back and forth from player to coach. So at the end of the day, you can get a player who resonates very well to a certain coach. You can get a player who does not really resonate to a certain coach. And it's such a thin line at the end of the day. It's such a thin line. You know, there's no right or wrong remedy. There's no written philosophy. There's no written formula on how to go about these things. But like I'm saying, it's just the relationship that comes down. You can get the best coach in the world, supposedly, you know, and you can get the best player, and they just won't click at the end of the day. So it just comes down to the nature of the two people on the day, on the relationship and the duration as it goes.
Well, what's your cricket predictor moment of the day right now? Who do you think is going to have the upper hand today?
I'm going with the Kings today because of that bowling lineup. I think they have a bowling lineup that is well suited for these kind of conditions. And I mean, when you talk about these conditions, this is a wicket that has an average scoring rate of over 9 since 2018. So I tend to go with what David has said, that this is not the sort of I beg your pardon, Paul, with regards to Rabada just rattling people out. No, this is the sort of surface that you want to control. You can't just unleash pace and then you let things happen and hope things to happen. No, you've got to control this sort of batting lineup because these guys can score. So you've got to be tentative in your plans. You've got to make sure your plans are on point. Restrict as opposed to over-attacking, I think, is the method to go. And I think this is the sort of a bowling lineup you've got that will handle these conditions. I mean, you've got someone like a Harpreet Brown, who's got an economy of 6.8 in that middle over. That is massive, especially with regards to T20 cricket is concerned, that control in that middle period. Because you've got batsmen who can explode. You're talking of Maxwell, talking of Virat Kohli. These are guys who can score easily in either side of the game, be it in the power play, the middle overs, and at the end. So that aspect of control is key.
Well, that's the beautiful answer, in-depth analysis, just like a professor of cricket that you've just enumerated us. Now, let's go on to the man who got it wrong yesterday, and we're going to egg him, Paul Dinette. Paul, your pick of the day.
Well, Sunil, if I get everyone wrong, that will start to be useful because you can just pick whatever the opposite of what I say is. But for what it's worth, I'm sitting at RCB today, and I'm being my man, Cameron Green, the big Aussie, the one that Greg Chappell said was the most talented young batter since Ricky Ponting. On a flat surface, let's see what he can do. That's my tip for today.
Well, absolutely. Well, we'll go on to your friend before we wrap up our session. David Brooks, what's your pick today?
Well, I think the toss is going to be important. I wouldn't be going firm until I've seen the result of the toss. But I'm with RCB. I think, yes, we're in Australian-friendly conditions. So one of Maxwell and Green to come off alongside Virat Kohli. Any runs from Faf and from Patidar would be a bonus. It's a great batting lineup RCB have got. And they, I think, have got the better quality all the way through, if you man for man today.
Well, absolutely. We've got two different views today and one non-committal expert in the house. But that's all we had time for. We enjoyed the session. Stanley, we welcome you on the session. Also, Paul and David have been phenomenal since the last World Cup. That's all we had time for.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.